Okay, we're going to get started. Thank you all for joining. Today we're really excited. We have a two-part webinar with the Energy Information Administration. First, we're going to look at their natural gas storage dashboard, and then we're going to hear a little bit about their strategic electricity initiative. So the first part of the webinar is going to be a tutorial on the natural gas storage dashboard, and then following that we'll have a presentation on the strategic electricity initiative. And what we're asking is to help inform this new initiative. There's this brief survey that we're asking all the webinar participants to complete, and you can complete it by clicking the link. Sorry, that screen is showing the wrong thing. By clicking the link that is under the handouts to PDF. If you open the PDF, there should be a link there to SurveyMonkey that you can complete. Ignore what this screen is showing. That's the wrong setup. But to that point, this is how you can submit your questions. So if you hear something interesting or you have a quick question that you want to ask, feel free to submit it at any point during the webinar, and I'll make sure that we can stop and talk about the question that you just asked. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to the EIA team to talk a little bit about their natural gas storage dashboard.
Hi, I'm Barbara Mariner-Volpe. I'm the manager for the Natural Gas Statistics team here at EIA, and it's my pleasure to walk you through the natural gas storage dashboard. My colleague, Chris Peterson, will actually do the demo, so his is the exciting part of this presentation. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the background on why we developed it, why we think it's relevant, et cetera. Just as a bit of a point of information, what we're talking about here is underground natural gas storage. And the storage dashboard is particularly important because it provides background on our weekly natural gas storage statistics that we publish. And why is that important? That's important because underground storage is basically the mechanism by which the market balances supply and demand. So typically in the summer months, there are injections into storage. In the winter, there are withdrawals out of storage. So some features about the dashboard are outlined on this slide. They will be driven home when Chris goes through the demo, and in particular, the interactive nature and the coverage of the various drivers that affect storage, and understanding storage statistics will be apparent at that time. I think on the second slide, why is natural gas storage data important? I think I've gone through a little bit of the background. Basically, it balances the market, and statistics on natural gas storage are a market mover. So prices for natural gas respond to the EIA statistics that we produce and publish each Thursday morning at 10:30. The last point, I'll call your attention to the last point on this slide about natural gas storage is often used to support changing intermittent generating technologies. So why are we improving what we're doing and the way we are presenting storage information? Currently, EIA produces various reports where we publish monthly data that you can download. We have the storage weekly storage report. The main reason we do this is to provide intelligence beyond the numbers, beyond the statistics that we report. And the Statistics, however, are very important, and as I mentioned, are a market mover. The weekly natural gas storage report, fondly referred to as WINGSR, is the Department of Energy's sole principal federal economic indicator. And that designation is because it is a major statistical series that describes the state of the economy. Other series that are also PFEIs are GDP, CPI, employment statistics, and various agriculture statistics as well. So beyond integrating information and providing background on the drivers, it also includes a regional detail. And it also helps inform our other products at EIA, our short-term energy outlook, our short-term forecasts, as well as our long-term forecasts. So our next slide gives an overview of what's in the WINGSR. Now, this is not the storage dashboard. This is just the report. So it basically consists of 3 components. I'm not going to refer to any of the statistics that are listed here, but I just want to give you a sense of the coverage. So in the upper left-hand corner is the actual weekly storage stocks by region, as well as a comparison to the previous year and a 5-year average. The second figure is the graph that shows for the lower 48 states a summary of current storage stocks as well as the 5-year average. So you have a 5-year minimum maximum range and the average. And the third section in the lower right-hand corner of the slide provides background statistics for those of you who recall your statistics classes. And this is relevant to provide some bounds on the estimates. The storage survey, the EIA 912, is a sample survey, and the coverage varies from about 94% to 100% of regional capacity. And as I mentioned a moment ago, it is the department's sole principal federal economic indicator. We've been collecting these data since 2002. Some changes that we've made over the last few years, and initially we had a coverage of 3 regions. We went to 5 regions. We provided additional detail on salt facilities. If you want more information about what a salt facility is, please visit the EIA.gov website. We have information there. We lowered some thresholds and we required additional reporting in the case of reclassifications. And a reclassification is a shift from base gas to working gas or working gas to base gas. The storage stocks that we report in the WINGSR are working gas stocks, those stocks that are available to the market. The dashboard design is premised on a number of requirements. The key is that we wanted it to be meaningful. We wanted automatic updates. We have it scheduled to release at 2:30. So this afternoon's demo, we'll be looking at pretty recent information. I should mention that the storage information that we report on Thursday is storage stocks as of the previous Friday. So it's just a several-day, 5 or 6 day delay. As I mentioned, we cover the drivers, some of the key elements that affect storage, so that someone that goes to the dashboard can understand what's driving what and how we got here and the adequacy of natural gas storage. I'm not going to spend very much time on slide number 8. I think I basically covered it. One point I haven't mentioned is that we do include some cool information about temperatures. That wasn't intended to be a pun, but a little humor is always welcome, I think. And finally, you're all dying to know how you can find the storage dashboard, and that's listed at the top of this slide. The second link is the EIA.gov, our website, and the third one is the weekly natural gas storage report itself. With that, I will turn the controls over to my colleague, Chris Peterson, for an exciting demo. Stay tuned.
All right, and before I get started, if you all have any questions about this material or later on even recommendations on how we can enhance the tool, our contact information is given on this slide you're looking at here, and I'll give you another email address here in a little bit. You can reach us at also. So,
and Chris, just to jump in real quick, also we're going to be posting all these slides afterwards, so we'll be sharing it with all the participants, so they'll be able to find your contact information that way as well.
Okay, excellent. All right, so now that Barbara has highlighted for everyone sort of why natural gas storage is important and some of the giving you some background on EIA storage program, what my goal here is to walk you through this fairly new product. I think we launched this in September. It builds upon lots of advanced tools the agency's creating to offer, I think, neater ways for people to see information, download things, use third-party data and EIA data more effectively than maybe we had in the past. And so we attempted to build some of those new capabilities into this product. When I walk through here, I guess there are four things I want to give you a feel for on this. I want to help you understand how the tool is set up. I'm going to talk a little bit about the content you can access in the tool. I'm going to highlight some of the features we've built into it, and then at the end, if you have some questions for us, I will be happy to answer questions now or even later on. So, sort of organizationally, we have three main parts to the product. We have a national overview page, which is what you're looking at now, and these are mostly metrics, information that gives you a feel for national level information. We have a regional tab that has information broken out by EIA's 5 storage regions. And then lastly, we organize material in a commentary tab where you can get regular information from the EIA on context and additional supporting data analytics on what these numbers are telling you about what's going on in the market or in storage itself. So that's sort of a big picture way of looking at things. And then regarding the content, we'll talk about the content in a couple ways. On one level, the content on this page is oriented around what the storage activity is itself. And then the other thing we've incorporated into the tool is understanding what are drivers or what are things that affect the activity. And we'll talk a little bit about both of those. And then, like I said, we can look at information on either a national, and here I should say by national, we really mean lower 48. This information does not have storage data for Alaska and Hawaii built into it. So with that, I'll pour into the content a little bit more. Probably the easiest way to understand what's going on with storage using this tool is to look at the visual in the upper left-hand side on the national overview page. And this graphic's intended sort of in a single picture to give you a feel for where we stand with respect to storage, both nationally and on a regional basis. And so you can, if you see the embedded mini map on the visualization, those colors correspond to the regions that the weekly natural gas storage report is oriented around. We used to have 3 regions, and several years ago we changed our reporting to cover 5 regions. So in this chart, you'll notice that the units are in billion cubic feet, and so each week we'll report on what the current inventories are by region, and those would be the diamonds you see reflected in each of the horizontal bars. We'll give you information what the 52-week range has been for that for inventories in that region, and then the gray boxes that surround the colored, I guess, rectangles, if you will. Those reflect the 5-year range where inventories have been. So, kind of in one bar, you see where we are, where we've been over the last year, and where we've been over the last 5 years. And then over here on the right, this is a national picture. So you can see the colored bars show you what the numbers are by region, and this gives you a national view. We've incorporated down below these fuel gauge graphics as part of this product, because a lot of times we would get the question, or people would wonder, not just what are the inventories, but how full is storage? And so we've come up with a way to calculate each week relative degrees of utilization of the storage, underground storage infrastructure in each of these regions. And, we've seen interesting things by doing that. So I want to move on to some other visualizations. Just to the right, you'll see the area where we report on temperatures. This map is broken up into NOAA's climate divisions. I believe there are 344 climate divisions, and each state has a varying number of those. And so this heat map is actually based on 344 different locations, which we have the ability to roll up into individual states and then into individual wings or regions as we need to. What this picture is showing is the departure from normal weather from the current storage week compared to a 30-year normal look at what temperatures would have been. And so, a takeaway here would have been that in the western half of the country and maybe just parts of the Midwest, we had somewhat cooler than normal weather. And then in much of the rest of the country, we had slightly warmer than normal weather. And as it turns out this week, the storage number we reported was pretty unexceptional. I think that's sort of a function of what happened with weather here. We can also, by activating, the weekly change, you can see how weather this week changed compared to the prior week. Is mostly warmer in parts of the country where storage withdrawals tend to be bigger this time of year, and it was a little cooler in the rest of the country. And then lastly, we have a capability using this daily animator where I can click on play here, and what it'll do is it'll tell me what the daily average temperatures are in absolute degrees day by day over a 2-week period. We have a big focus on weather because the primary thing that really drives storage activity seasonally, either in the winter or summer, is either furnace loads for residential and commercial customers in the winter. And so when those loads are high, natural gas withdrawals tend to be relatively higher. and our storage numbers generally align pretty well with weather data like that. And increasingly in the summer, where we're using more natural gas all the time, during periods when it's particularly hot, and you might be using air conditioning more, natural gas use for power generation can rise, and when that happens, it may limit the opportunity to inject natural gas in storage fields, and we might see lower injections than you might otherwise see.
Hey, Chris, quick question from the audience. Are you able to do that comparison, temperature comparison, on a monthly or annual basis as well?
So we have the date. So this that's a fair question. So we have all the data to do that, but currently this tool doesn't do that. I do think though that I think in STIO does have monthly information on heating degree days and cooling degree days, and so I think some of the information you might be getting at could be available in our other product. But over time, that's not a bad idea to give people different time slices. The STIO, by the way, is EIA short-term energy outlook, and it's a product prepared by our forecasting group that gives a kind of a detailed look on energy supply and demand, prices and weather, and some other metrics over a 18 to 24 month period, depending on how the calendar falls. One other thing on the map here is you have the ability to, with your mouse, you can zoom in and you can see more detailed information. So if you want to know what's going on in your state, or if you have an interest in particular counties that might be represented by these climate divisions, you have the ability to look at data that way. I guess we have another way to look at weather here underneath, where you can, we have a bar chart that shows how weather can vary day by day, and where you are in relation to a normal range and record ranges. This chart on the left, by the way, I'm sorry?
No, thank you. That's helpful.
This chart on the left is sort of it replicates the Wingser chart we produce at 10:30 on mostly on Thursdays when that product's released. I'm going to talk just a little bit more about content, and then I'm going to move on and show you some of the features that the report has. Nuclear outages can have a pronounced role on gas use for power generation at times, and higher gas use for power generation may affect storage injection, so we provide information on that. Over here on the left, this scatter plot you see is we've developed this so that analysts can understand what the relationship is between near-month natural gas futures prices and where the natural gas inventories for the lower 48 reside with respect to the 5-year average. And so the zero line here represents, you would be right at the 5-year average. Anything to the left would represent a shortfall or deficit to the 5-year average. Anything to the right of the zero line would represent surplus gas held in underground storage compared to the 5-year average. And what you normally see is a kind of downward sloping curve where when the deficit to the 5-year average is larger, the natural gas prices often are higher, and vice versa. When there's a surplus amount of gas, as that surplus gets bigger, natural gas prices can actually be lower. When you use this tool, the orange dot here will reflect the current week's activity, so it's easier to identify. Some of you perhaps have been following, as the years gone by, natural gas prices and storage, and one narrative has been that for much of the year, natural gas prices have been pretty low. They've been under $3 most of the time, even though the storage deficit's been mostly, it started out in a pretty low state in April due to low injections early in the season, and we didn't really claw back much gas, and lately we've been growing the deficit to the 5-year average. So for most of the year, even though the storage deficit was quite large, the change in price was pretty modest. More recently, we've seen that change, and we've seen that with the growing deficit to the 5-year average, there has been a price reaction, and part of that's also been due to sort of simultaneous large demand for residential commercial consumption, along with ongoing increases in natural gas exports to Mexico, coupled with growing LNG feedstock. So those are all kind of piling on here together, and so the supply-demand balance has worked out so that demand's been growing faster than supply recently, even though supply is up quite a bit for the year. And so we've seen more of this downward slope shape in this chart than what we've seen in the last, mostly in the last 2 or 3 years. So that's sort of a complicated visualization, but if you have any follow-on questions on that, you can let us know. And then I guess that lastly, on the last content thing I want to let you know is that by clicking on this regional tab, you can get a whole series of visualizations that show what current storage inventories are and what the changes in the inventories have been compared to, for this year and then compared to other periods. And I'll quickly talk about some of the features like that in 1 second. So this page is mostly a series of kind of multi-period range charts or snake charts. And in the past, I'll say a lot of third-party vendors and others would make these charts. EIA wasn't really, we weren't consistently building these and sharing them. And so, I think it's advantageous to you all that we're able to do this, and I'll show you how you can access those in 1 second. So that's a review of, the major kinds of content we're providing. What I want to quickly do now is walk through maybe some of the features that the dashboard has. So the first thing I want to highlight is up here on the sort of subtitle line. We're going to tell you when the last time we updated the dashboard was, and we updated this information about an hour ago, maybe a little bit more than that. We don't have a timestamp, but it happened today. We'll tell you when the next update is going to come out, and then we'll tell you when the last time we updated the commentary was. We put up some commentary maybe a couple hours ago, and I'll quickly show you that in a moment. So this tells you how up-to-date the information is. It also will tell you here, if you just want to look very quickly at what's going on, you can get the current lower 48 inventory number, and you can also understand what the most recent change in inventories were. We tried to make the dashboard interactive, so you could see that when I mouse over information, you can see values for here, like 2018, 2017, as well as ranges. If I want to declutter the pictures, I have an ability to use the mouse, and I can turn off ranges and just display, whatever period I'm interested in. We have gotten some feedback where some users have mentioned maybe it'd be nice to have additional years to click on here, and so we can think about doing that at some point. So you have an ability to, select information you want to look at. The other thing you can do is if you click on this sort of down arrow icon, you have an ability to print this chart. You can download the image, or you can, I guess I'm going to go rogue here, Dennis. I'm going to show you. So if you want the data, you can access the data here in a CSV format, and it'll tell you where what the source of the data is, et cetera. So we try to make it very easy. Let me go back. So we've tried to make it very easy to with a couple of simple clicks to access the data and be able to visualize the data in ways that are helpful to you. What else? So I talked about download. Earlier we went over how you can incorporate animation into the product. You can access prior weeks of the report up here under the report archival function. So that's available to you. You can print, if you wanted to print all the dashboards at once, you can click print dashboards here, and that'll give you a way to, with one click, print all the material out. So one section of the dashboard I haven't spoken about is on a pretty routine basis, we are updating information on the dashboard related to natural gas storage. We just posted this a couple hours ago. And so one market finding that we see has happened is that, due to a combination factors, as we get, a little deeper into December, this was actually the second lowest level of natural gas inventories that the lower 48 has represented since 2002. And so given the fact that the market's much bigger than it was then and demands are a lot larger, that's something we'll keep watching. At the same time, we also recognize that the production capacity of the U.S. and the ability to, if need be, to throttle back on how much gas we are exporting, either via pipeline or LNG. We have a potential to do that to also increase supply that could be redirected to the U.S. if that was economic. So that's the commentary piece. I guess the last thing I'll let you all realize is that if you have additional questions about this product, if you go here to note sources and related links and click on that, it'll bring up detailed documentation on all the figures you see that are in this product. And the other thing I'd like to bring your attention to is that down here under feedback, we have this link called Natural Gas Storage Dashboard at EIA.gov. By clicking on that, you can send an email, and it'll go to the whole team here at EIA that's focused on storage content. And if you have suggestions, questions, or you need help with storage issues, you can send an email to this address, and we'll be happy to respond to you. I guess with that, I'll see if there are any questions you have either now, or you can get back to us later, and I'll let my other colleagues discuss electricity.
So there a number of questions have come through actually, and I'm going to try and get through them quickly, just so we have enough time for the other portion of this webinar. But that's how, one of the questions was, if they're having trouble finding some information, who can they reach out to? So that's helpful that you pointed that out, and knowing that everyone is monitoring that email and will be responsive to it. But also, so some other questions that we received were, do you do more of the predictive analysis of things like price, demand, and capacity? And is that shown here on the dashboard?
Yeah, so we have a whole team here at EIA that do. So we really have two groups, although some people work on both teams. We have kind of a short-term forecasting group that contribute insight to our short-term energy outlook, which and as part of that product, they do look ahead on both prices, supply and demand of natural gas, as well as projections of natural gas storage inventory levels. So we do have a team that looks at that. Those projections are monthly. I don't think we don't have any weekly projections from that team. So yes, we have people focused on that, and there's a guy named Timothy Hess here at HESS. He leads that team, and so you could, if there are questions about that, you could send them to this address, and I'll make sure Tim gets them, or you can contact Tim directly.
Should we just go to the STIO? Yeah. Go to top.
Sure. Yeah, so
Right.
since we're we're live on our
We're live.
website, we don't have to guess. So I
Okay,
went to
perfect.
topics, and so this here under short-term energy outlook, you'll see that the current outlook, and there's a wealth of stuff in here. We have a data browser, interactive data viewer down here. There's PDF files, and there's Excel-based information. So and a lot of it is focused on natural gas. So if they want monthly projections, this is the best place to get those. And then we have it for longer term outlooks of things. There you would go to our annual energy outlook landing pages.
Okay, thank you. And now taking a slightly different track, going back to the natural gas storage in particular, and how are you collecting this information? And then how do you handle, data revisions?
Do you want to handle?
Well, so I'll talk about the third-party data stuff, and then Barbara's pretty involved in the collection of the EIA storage information. So we're relying on. It's a good question. So the dashboard reflects a combination of information from EIA as well as third parties, and so the storage activity that we're reporting in the dashboard, that's EIA information, and I think it comes from the 912 survey, and Barbara can talk more about that in a second. And then a lot of the third-party data, like the NYMEX futures prices, comes from the commodity, from CME Group, and we get a lot of the natural gas volume information by sector for the power sector and for the residential commercial sectors, as well as our import and export data. Those information come from Opus Point Logic, and they're a third-party partner and vendor we use on some of our dashboard products. The futures curves we're getting from Bloomberg. And I'm glad you asked that question, because you'll notice when you try to download the information, when you go to some of the visualizations, if you try to do a download and there's no data there, the reason why there's no data there is per our sharing agreements with those parties, we're not allowed to distribute raw data to our stakeholders. However, if it's information you really want, what you could do is you could send us an email. We could put you in touch, perhaps directly, with our vendor, and you all could maybe take advantage of seeing what they could help you out there. On the Windsor data or the EIA data, Barbara can address that question.
So for the EIA 912, which is the survey vehicle to collect the weekly data, we collect data from the operators of the underground storage facilities, and there are a little over 400 facilities. Many of them are small, and many of the operators, many of the companies operate more than one facility. I think I mentioned the coverage of the capacity at a regional level, and it significantly exceeds 90% for each one of the regions. As a principal federal economic indicator, we have strict procedures that we must follow in the compilation and release and how we handle the data. So it is strictly protected before the release at 10:30 and 10:30 on Thursdays. And it is the estimates are prepared in a secure space and not connected to the internet, so that folks do not have an advance copy or information about the storage numbers. If there are other questions about the 912 survey, I'm happy to answer those now or in the future. We also have a monthly survey which is a census. So we collect storage information from all of the storage operators, and we publish that information monthly. The storage information on both the weekly and the monthly are protected, so we do not release the storage stock information at a detailed level, just aggregate level only.
And I
Okay, thank
failed to
you.
mention, and I don't think I mentioned this already, but all of the weather information we're leveraging to make visualizations here with it's all NOAA data, it's all administrative data.
Okay.
It's comes off their FTP and website. So none of that. There's no paywall, or it's all basically free government data.
Okay, great. And you, Chris, you started talking about this just a little bit, but are you noticing a decline in interest for storage data due to the high levels of production growth that we're seeing in the country?
So you're saying a decreased interest in storage data?
That's correct.
No, I don't. I see the opposite. I think that a lot of people during, in the run up to some of the colder weather we started getting in mid-November were actually puzzled by why storage activity numbers were, or why the natural gas price response to relatively or historically low inventory numbers were so low. I think that actually increased interest in knowing what was going on and what is the go-forward relationship between U.S. production and demand and the amount of storage that the country needs to rely upon. So I'm not seeing that. Now,
Okay.
what there has been less interest on a macro level in building new natural gas storage facilities, and that's partly because of
Right.
what has been a decline in natural gas price volatility. Generally, we've had episodes of high prices, but generally the day-to-day variability in natural gas prices until recently has been pretty modest the last several years, and that has decreased the appetite to invest in building more natural gas storage capacity.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's helpful. And so looking at EIA data collection more broadly, I'm sure you're aware, DOE recently put out this notice of proposed rulemaking on securing critical electric infrastructure information. So how might that new proposed rule impact some of EIA's data collection processes?
I know there are some folks that are discussing that, but yeah, why don't?
Hi there, this is Steve Harvey. I'm a senior advisor to the administrator here at EIA. EIA functions very separately from the policy side of the Department of Energy because the idea is we want to be credible that we're producing data that's sort of outside of that policy process. Having said that, everybody's really interested in how critical infrastructure is working, and we are actually spending some time and effort trying to reassess what we are doing in order to focus on use of critical infrastructure in different places. And this natural gas report is a version of that. We'll start talking about some of the electricity stuff that we do here, which is related to that as well. And then we have some initiatives going forward. I think we're going to touch on at the end.
Thank you for that. That's a helpful overview. And I just want to put a shameless plug in that NGA is actually going to be producing a policy scan looking at what states are doing at the state level to protect some of the critical infrastructure information, exempted and also secure the data collection process. And so with that, I think we've touched on all the main questions for this section. So I think we can now turn to the Strategic Electricity Initiative.
All right, great. This is April Lee. So me and my colleague Lisa Cabral and Dennis Messina will take this part. I just want to briefly introduce My name is April Lee. I'm a senior electricity analyst in our Office of Electricity, Renewables, and Uranium Statistics. We're responsible for collecting the electricity data for EIA, and my colleague Lisa will introduce herself before she gets started. And just as a general background, so we decided to expand the scope of this part of the presentation a little bit. We figured it would be helpful to start out actually giving a general overview of the electricity data and products that we currently produce, just to sort of educate and inform everyone of what we currently do. And then we'll transition to, introducing our electricity initiative and some of our thoughts and ideas, new project ideas going forward, and then, opening the floor to hear feedback or suggestions from the group today. So with that, I'll pass it over to Lisa.
Hi, this is Lisa Cabral. I'm in the Office of Electricity, Renewables, and Uranium Statistics, and as April mentioned, I'm going to talk first about what electricity data EIA currently collects. And so to just step back, EIA's mission is to collect, analyze, and share important electricity data. As we just discussed, we do this independent of other agencies, and even here at DOE, independent of the policy office. And we are able to collect comprehensive data by statute, and almost all of that data in terms of electricity data is public. Monthly data we collect, it provides preliminary indications, trends, and then we have annual data that we publish first in the late summer, and then we finalize that in the fall. And the most detailed data that we have is available in survey files by each survey, but we also aggregate the data and put it into various summary tables and publications for ease of use. So I'm just going to cover some of those now. And the Data Electricity Guide is a handy resource if you want to see what data we have, our methods for collecting the data and estimating monthly trends. And EIA electricity data really covers the industry from one end to the other. You can see here all the different surveys that cover resources, transmission, retail sales, and more. So I'm just going to talk about some of the major surveys, starting with the EIA 860. So this is our power plant characteristics, and we collect capacity, both operational, retired, and planned capacity. The most up-to-date information is available in the monthly report, and then the annual survey collects more detailed information, in particular for different technologies like solar, wind, and battery storage. We also collect information on what plants and generators are dual fuel or capable of fuel switching, and what environmental equipment is installed at the plants. The EIA 923 survey collects operational data on those plants. So we have net generation, the fuel that was consumed, fuel delivery, cost, and stocks, and then also environmental data such as emissions. And here you can see a screenshot of one of our detailed survey files to just show you that we have this data at a very detailed level by generator, by plant. The EIA 861 survey collects data on retail sales, reliability, net metering, and other topics. So we have monthly data on retail sales, net metering, distributed resources, and solar. And then on the annual survey, we also collect data about demand response, energy efficiency programs, service territory, and we have annual reliability metrics. So you might have heard of SAIDI and SAIFI. We collect all this data by provider and by state. We also have some fuel and industry specific surveys. These might be of interest if these industries are especially concentrated in your state. So we track PV, solar module shipments, imports, exports, and manufacturing. We track wood pellet production, coal production. So just wanted to put it out there that these surveys and their data are available. And now I'll start to talk about some of the way we group this data so it's usable for you. So the emissions by power plant region, thermal, electric, cooling water data, This is all available by state. You can filter it by plant as well. Power plant construction costs. This is some of our data that is confidential, but if you are in a large state, then there might be a breakout of the cost by technology and state. And you can see here, we're able to track how construction costs are changing year by year. So this can also be helpful information. Also note the U.S. electric system operating data. So we collect data from 66 balancing authorities. Balancing authorities are grid operators, and their boundaries usually don't align with state boundaries, but this data might still be of interest. We collect load forecast, net generation by source, and interchange, which is exchange between different grid areas. This data, we use it for our hurricane coverage. So if there's a storm passing through, you can see how that impacts load. It can also be helpful to see hourly net generation, how those resources are changing within a day and between different regions. And then we aggregate our data into several publications. I'll note in particular here the state electricity profiles. This provides data series for a given state back to 1990. And so if you're just looking for high-level annual statistics, that's the place to go. And then our other publications combine, all of the various electricity data. And here is a zoomed-in view of the state electricity profiles, some of the topics you can find in those profiles. It's also helpful to compare a metric across states. EIA also has a data browser for our electricity data. All the data that is available in the browser is also available in an API, so you can pull it into Excel and refresh the data. This data includes electricity generation, fuel consumption, fuel stocks and costs, retail sales, and average prices. And here's a view of that data browser. You can click and select a series you're interested in and download the data. We also have some prepared summary tables that are available in Excel and PDF for various topics, and also across states by a certain topic. And then we have wholesale electricity price data. So this is just several selected hubs. This is third-party data, and we have the daily, current day spot prices. We also have a time series that's available with a 2-week lag. And we talked about projections for natural gas. Well, we also have projections for electricity. The long-term projections in the annual energy outlook go out to 2050. Our short-term projections go out about a year. And as we talked about earlier, there's a data browser, so you can also click through there. For electricity, we project capacity, generation, retail sales, retail prices. And now I'll pass it over to April to discuss our electricity initiatives.
All right, thanks. So Lisa covered very comprehensively everything that we currently do. We have a new strategic electricity initiative from our administrator, Linda Capuano, and she wanted us to, work to develop a plan to enhance our electricity program. And really, we wanted to draw on our position as, a federal body that's, impartial, independent, and tasked with providing, electricity information, data analysis, and with national coverage. So we've started this initiative, and we have these, what we want to achieve is first checking in with our current audiences and, talk to them and find out, are we meeting their needs? Are there other needs that they have that, we aren't addressing? And also thinking about potential new audiences that maybe we should be serving and how we might be able to do so. And then generally just receiving feedback on, our existing products and also ideas for new products. So this slide is, I'll just quickly go through, or just some ideas that have come up in ways that we might be able to expand the program. So as Lisa mentioned, most of our data is monthly and annual, so we might try to collect, more timely data with higher resolution, weekly, daily, or more hourly data. We can provide easier access to RTO ISO data. So these are the grid operators and wholesale market operators. They already publish a lot of information on their own websites, so we might be able to have a role in sort of bringing together that information and providing it in a sort of curated way. More accessible state-level data is always a possibility, and also outside of states, it's not easy maybe from a state perspective, but there are other non-state groupings that are important in understanding, the markets and contextualizing what's going on. And so that's looking at data by the balancing authorities, the regional transmission organizations, NERC regions, other different ways that we might be able to reconfigure our data to allow access, analysis ability with these different groupings in mind. More information about electric power status during emergencies. Lisa mentioned the hurricanes. We recently published daily electricity status reports during Hurricane Florence and Hurricane Michael, and this was drawing on our hourly system operating data, so we could see, for example, in Florida, how demand was dropping, and in the southeast as the hurricane sort of sped through. So that's one idea we could expand on. And then generally, collecting more information on various topics like distributed energy resources, including, solar PV, batteries, or retail electricity rates and tariffs, or the transmission system, infrastructure and operations. And so this slide is summarizing some of our current efforts. So Lisa mentioned the hourly data. We just started collecting the generation by energy source. That was a new enhancement to that survey this year. And so we're working on implementing that and reflecting that, building that into the website. Our state energy portal, which draws state-focused data on all the various energy sectors, that's being redesigned, and they're adding a lot of data dashboards and making it easier for folks to find the data they want and be able to download it and just access it in different ways. So that's already underway. We're planning to roll it out public beta by sometime spring 2019, so look out for that. I think that would be of big interest to this group. And then regional dashboards. Chris earlier mentioned the Southern California dashboard that we created about 2 years ago after the Lasso Canyon natural gas leak. And so that turned out to be very popular. Folks wanted to know what was going on in that region because of, the impacts of that. So that's looking at electricity and gas impacts in that region. And there's the link for that there. We also have a New England dashboard that's currently in the works, and we have a small group of folks working really hard to spin that up probably in the next month or so, and that will be focused on the New England region and their winter market situation of power activity and gas constraints. Two products that we're currently in the stages of scoping out and developing sort of early discussions are the Electric Power Weekly, which would be a power market overview report published on a weekly basis, roughly equivalent to EI's existing petroleum and natural gas weekly publications. And then an RTO portal where we might, as I mentioned, RTOs already publish a lot of data about their markets on their website. And so we might, we thought it would be helpful to collect sort of comparable data for the different RTOs and put it together in one place, and add background explainers, so folks who are interested but don't quite know, what does this price series mean, or, why is this meaningful? We explain some context for, how you might use that data. And then lastly, energy disruptions and emergency response. We mentioned the hurricane reports. So we've done, various efforts, at least on the electricity side, have been fairly ad hoc. So we're just discussing, ways that we might standardize how EIA responds or how EIA could provide information or analysis during those types of events. So moving on. And so really, we just wanted to hear from, NGA members of, these questions. These are the same questions on the survey that you can download, and I think will be sent out after the webinar. We're just open to hearing what your feedback is for maybe products you already know about and use, or maybe you've heard about, or some of the ideas we just talked about. And then in general, just sort of understanding your needs. Are there questions that frequently come up or that your constituents ask you? How can we help you with data or analysis? And then also, what industry developments or topics are you or your constituents most concerned about, or maybe most interested, in and want to track or want more information about? And just general suggestions for, how we might improve our communication outreach to you and your colleagues. So with that, I guess we'll open to any questions, or, we're always available afterward for surveys. So.
Great, thank you. And like I said earlier, the survey you can find underneath handouts, and there's a link in there, and we'll be sending that out after with the recording of this webinar as well as the slides. Two quick reactions that we received. So the first being, it seems like there are a ton of products that EIA produces, but they still seem pretty siloed. For example, just jumping from the natural gas dashboard to the short-term energy outlook, is there some thought to in the future maybe integrating those different products a little bit more, just so that you can just go to one page instead of having to know exactly which different products or services you might want to go to?
Yeah, that's a really good question and comment. I think that's something that we struggle with in general, just because of the sheer amount of data and publications we have. So I think we've tried various methods. We're open to hearing suggestions. It's definitely something we'd like to do more and better. So I think actually some of the dashboard products that we've done have integrated. It's kind of new for us. We're making baby steps along that way, integrated gas data and the electricity data. So we'd definitely like to keep moving in that direction.
Why don't I talk? This is Steve Harvey again. Let me follow up on that point April just made. I think we have two products that are more regionally oriented, so they may or may not relate to any particular individual. One of them exists and has existed for a little while, and the other one we will be releasing here in about the next month or so. We talked about it a little bit. The first one is a focus on Southern California that integrates information about electricity and natural gas, and it really relates to the issues managing in Southern California with the reduced access to the Aliso Canyon natural gas storage field. You guys maybe remember this from a couple of years ago, even if you're not from California, where they had to evacuate neighborhoods and things because of that particular storage field. It turns out it's central to managing Southern California, LA area electricity, and to secondarily natural gas. And the only way to look at that is in an integrated way. So that would be our first and most established version of that. As it turns out, I just looked today at our New England product that'll be coming out. That's very much a response to New England dashboard to last year's bomb cyclone experience, where the New England states faced some real challenges in the winter, managing both natural gas and electricity. And in that case, we will actually be doing a soft release in the next week or two. And in fact, if any of you are from New England and you have any interest, let us know, and we can probably get you. Well, we certainly can get you early access to that. But we're planning on having that in the first week or two of January, so that we'll be able to cover any bad weather that goes into New England. And then finally, what I'd say is we do have a fair number of things related to states that attempt to organize that information. And I think we mentioned in the presentation that we're in the process of revising that to make that even more effective. we got somebody that'll speak to that real quick.
Okay. With our state portal enhancements, we are looking at the historical data and putting them into data dashboards. I could show a quick view of sort of in our prototype we're working with. But we are still addressing what we could do to include forecast data with the history data. That is more difficult to do as the categories and definitions might vary. And much of our forecasting work is regional, where the state portal is looking to bring the more detailed geography by state or even some of the city level data we have into the portal.
But you look at a number of fuels.
Yes, yes. So this product is available today. It's on the screen now. And there are some data tables available and quick facts by state. And then with the enhancement, we're taking what was a data table and transforming that into a data dashboard that will be customizable for your state.
That's great. I know that at least on from NGA's perspective, we're really excited and looking forward to the revamping of the state portal.
Okay.
So one other question that's come in, when you do the forecasting for various different scenario planning, you only base that on existing policy, is that correct? And if that's the case, is there any thought to maybe doing some new forecasting that incorporates potential future policies instead of just existing?
Yeah, this is Steve Harvey again. When you look at our annual energy outlook, that's that long-term one Lisa talked about that goes out to 2050. What we present is usually a couple of cases. Our reference case, sort of the base case that you would compare sensitivities to, is based on current law. So the idea was to create a kind of a reference case that you can compare alternative cases to, that you could look at policy alternatives, right? If policy changes get made, it becomes a little awkward sometimes when everybody expects a policy change to get made, but it's not actually done, and so in our reference case we don't include it. We do normally do a set of sensitivities. I think in the last annual energy outlook, we did sort of low and high oil and natural gas discovery cases. We've done some cases, I think, with regard to transportation vehicles and the like. I'm not sure off the top of my head what we're doing for the next round, but that next round of that long-term forecasting, the annual energy outlook, will come in January. I think the latter half of January. So you may want to be kind of keeping an eye out for what's going on there. We do not typically do more than one case for the short-term energy outlook. And as a consequence, that one sort of follows the reference case theory of being under current legislation. So we actually do provide a certain amount of sensitivities. Of course, there's always a lot of interest in which sensitivities are in and which aren't. Right.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. That's helpful. And Dennis, did you want to add something about this slide?
Yes. So this is Dennis Messina in the outreach office here at EIA. Just building on the idea of trying to find all the reports and data that's relevant to your particular state energy office. Here at EIA, we're willing to help you link to that data from your website, and we have graphics that you can use for banners. And there's another resource that's also available. We try to post graphics for each state on our Flickr page. So just all you have to do is we can send the link out, or you can Google Flickr EIA. And if you go to each state, we regularly upload charts and graphics for reports that are relevant to the state that's within that album. So that's another popular resource that we found with state energy offices. And that's it.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
And that's all the questions that we have from the audience. Is there any sort of final comments that anyone from EIA would like to make?
No? I think we're good on our end.
Great. Well,
Thanks for joining us.
thank you very much for taking the time today to tune in, and thank you to EIA for offering this great training. And like I said, the recording of this will be sent out to everybody, as well as the slides and a link to the survey. So if you can, please fill that survey out for us.
And thank you for having us. Please, on the slides is the contact information. So for any follow-on questions, feel free to reach out.
Great. Well, thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks. Thank you.